for this Friday evening is a highly influential animal rights activist. He is the co-founder of grassroots animal rights organisation Surge. In 2018, he and his partner Luna opened Unity Diner, a non-profit restaurant where all proceeds go back into Surge to fund wider-reaching campaigns. He is an absolutely amazing human being, and it is my pleasure to introduce to this stage this evening, and to all of you, please make as much noise as you can for Earthling! Ed!
Wow, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and thank you for wanting to come to listen to me. I can't really see all the way down to the back, but this is pretty surreal, actually. So there's a few things I want to talk about, as there always is. And the themes of this talk will be slightly different to the themes of the talk that I did to vegan audiences before. And I want us to kind of lay the framework for what I'm about to say by going back to the first time I visited a chicken farm, a broiler farm, a chicken meat farm. This was like 2.5 years ago, and I remember that a group of us had got out and we were walking towards this factory farm, and it's in the middle of the night, so it's pitch black, and we're wandering through the fields, and we approached these big sheds. And this was a big, big farm. So I think there's about 12 sheds or so on the premises. And we approached the one shed that we were going to go and enter, and we put our biosecurity suits on and did all the necessary things that we needed to do. I remember a feeling of just anxiety and fear and nervousness. I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. And so we walk into the barn and we go into the little decontamination area. And the first thing I saw was there was a window on the door into the barn. And it completely took my breath away. Because it was absolutely massive. And there was no sight of the floor at all. There was just chickens everywhere. And so we opened the door and we proceed to step in. And they all start to try and get away. And I felt so uncomfortable for a moment because I realized that those chickens didn't see us as being any different to the farmers that go in and day out. And so we're wandering through and we're filming and we're taking footage of the animals, and I come across the first dead one laying in the ammonia-riddled, feces-covered floor of the barn. And they were laying on their back, and their chest was completely exposed. And my heart sank for a moment. But then I looked up and looked around, and I saw dozens more just like that. There was one chicken who was dying, very nearly at the end of their life. And so I sat next to that chicken and I offered some sort of element of what I perceived could be comfort. So I stroked the chicken a little bit. And part of me was like, this chicken's actually the lucky one in a sense, because their life will be over soon, whereas the others, the tens of thousands of others that are alive, their torment is still going to continue. And so the end of the filming came, and we walked out again, and I checked the wall charts, because in each barn they have a wall chart which lists how many animals are in the barn, but also how many animals are culled by the farmer. And so we hear figures all the time, don't we? Figures like 56 billion land animals are killed, 75 billion land animals are killed. It's very hard to quantify how many there are that are actually killed. And on this wall chart it said on that day, the day when I went into the barn, the farmer had culled 100 of the chickens in that one barn. Which means that we can guess that he culled maybe 1,200 chickens in that one day across the whole farm. And we think that every day that's what the farmers are doing. And these chickens are ones that are never registered in the figures that we use. And so when we think about 56 billion or 75 billion or however many billion it is that we see in these statistics, the number's significantly higher. It doesn't take into account all these animals. And as I left the barn, I thought, what would my parents think of me now? What would they say to me if they saw me doing this at this moment? Because I perceived to be what I was doing was something that was good. To be there and to expose what's happening to these animals. And I thought, if by some weird coincidence my mum and my dad just popped up in front of me, would they be disappointed in me? Would they be like, what are you doing? This is not what we asked you to do. This is not what you went to university for. Get your life back on track. Would they be proud of me? If I could take them into the barns, what would they say? Would they agree with me? Would they say, thank you for opening my eyes? And would they make one of those phony excuses that we hear all the time? That's the question of why became really important to me. Because I left feeling upset, disappointed, and angry. And those emotions felt highly useless to me. And so I thought the only way that I could really try and come to terms with these emotions is by trying to rationalize why this is happening. I mean, how have we got ourselves into this situation in the first place? I mean, there must be a reason why this has happened. I can't hold on to these feelings that people are just inherently and intrinsically evil. There has to be a system in place. Now, there was an incident that happened in 2004, I believe, in Omaha, Nebraska. And it's wrote about in a book called Every 12 Seconds. And it's about 6 cattle who escaped from a slaughterhouse. Now, most of the cattle were rounded up and sent back to be murdered, but one of them ran down an alleyway. And this alleyway was adjacent to a second slaughterhouse. And there was a bit of a commotion, a bit of a kerfuffle, and so workers from the second slaughterhouse came out to see what was going on. But what they witnessed were the police officers shooting the cattle, the cow, shooting her until she was dead in the middle of the alleyway. Now what's really interesting about this is that those slaughterhouse workers from the second slaughterhouse went back inside and spoke about how awful that it was. And in fact, one of the workers there, she compared it to when the police officers had shot an unarmed man not too long before in Omaha. And she said that it was unbelievable that they treated this animal with such disrespect, with such little regard for their life. It seems kind of ironic, doesn't it? And hypocritical. The slaughterhouse workers were absolutely flabbergasted, shocked, and appalled at the fact that the police had just killed this animal without any regard for their life. And on face value, we might think that's ridiculous. And on face value, we might think, that makes me angry. Because this is what these people are doing every 12 seconds. Taking the life of the cow every 12 seconds. And the one life of a cow is taken in a way that's not normal to them. And they think it's disgusting. I actually think there's something to this story that should give us a glimmer of hope, potentially. That even these people who are ingrained in the system, the people who partake in the violence and exploitation of this system, still think it's wrong on some level. And still disgusted by this on some level. And so the talks that I normally do are normally, we have to be activists. This is why we should be activists. We have a moral obligation to be activists. Which we do. Nothing's changed, right? It's true. But I actually want to frame the talk tonight in a slightly different way. Because I think the way that we can be effective activists is by rationalizing and understanding why these things work. Because if we don't understand them, it feels foreign to us and makes us feel angry. And so I want to go back many, many years. Let's go back 15,000 years ago or so to a time called the Paleolithic and the Mesolithic eras. And so it's during this time that humanity, or our species, existed as hunter-gatherers. We were nomadic beings, and each day-to-day was purely about survival, about getting through to the next day and hopefully encouraging the rest of our family to survive and not be killed by the many, many potential dangers that existed in the world. And so the men were predominantly the hunters, and the women were predominantly the gatherers. And for most of our life, this is exactly how we operated as a species. And then came something called the Neolithic era. This is around 12,000 years ago. And many consider this time to be just as important as the Industrial Revolution, because when our species changed beyond what we'd ever known before. We began agriculture, and it happened in something called the Fertile Crescent, which is like modern-day Iraq for now. We began domesticating animals, sheep and goats first, and we also began producing crops and farmlands. And this changed everything. We no longer were nomadic. We began to settle and form little homes and little colonies. We could produce food. We didn't have to worry about famine and hunger and food scarcity. In fact, we had so much food, we could begin to trade it. And so we traded and started exploiting animals. We also traded plants and arable farming as well. And it was also during this time that we had to start defending and protecting land and protecting property. And in fact, what happened during this time is very much set the precedent for how we live today. Importantly, it was during this time that the focus of our survival no longer became about purely surviving, but about actually expressing ourselves in artistic and creative ways. So we began art, we began pottery, design, and all these different things that we now take as granted in our society. Now let's fast forward a little bit further. And let's go to 1947, so just after the Second World War. And in Britain in 1947 is around the time that the first factory farms were created. And so we see factory farms as these symbols of violence and brutality, because that's exactly what they were. But how often do we try and understand how they came to be, or why did they come to be? If we can understand this, then maybe we have a grasp of how we can actually destroy them and end them. And so in 1947, just after the end of the Second World War, the UK government passed a new agricultural bill which provided subsidies to animal farmers that incentivized technological advancements and improvements in efficiency. And so we began factory farming poultry, so chicken, so both for meat and for eggs. And what's really interesting is that actually the meat was considered a byproduct at the time. Eggs were the product that we actually wanted to factory farm, and meat was just a byproduct because it was too expensive to produce on their own, or just for meat on its own. And so the reason that we factory farmed at that time isn't because we were purely looking to inflict as much suffering as possible. There was much pressure within society to increase food availability within the UK. We'd just come out of the wars and there was fears of ration, fears of not being able to feed the population and feed the civilization within the UK. And so we put pressure on our government to find systems of agriculture that would improve the self-sufficiency of the UK. And as such, that's what we did. We created these factory farms only for animals such as birds at the beginning. Now let's flash forward to the 1960s. So we're in the mid-1960s now. Now something really important happened between 1945 and 1965, which is the generation of baby boomers, where we started to have lots of children because we felt safe. There was an abundance of food, we were no longer in big world wars, we felt that we could procreate and have families. And there was an emphasis on having so-called nuclear traditional families. And part of that nuclear traditional family was about food, and about having dinner together, and about having meat on the table. Because meat became a symbol of doing well, a symbol of being wealthy, a symbol of status. And so come mid-1960, the industry is faced with a problem again, because the demand for these products is increasing, but they can't supply them. And so they began factory farming pigs and dairy and beef cattle as well. And the reason they began factory farming is because they couldn't possibly meet the demand that we as consumers asked for through grass-fed or outdoor-reared animals anymore. It seems kind of funny, doesn't it, to think there seems to be such a push now for this notion of grass-fed animals. Well, the reason we have factory farms is because as a system, it can't possibly work to begin with. That's why we began factory farming these animals, because they take longer to produce, they take longer to grow, and they're not as profitable to farmers. And actually there's a study, and this study was released about a year ago or 2 years ago, and it was a joint study by the universities of Oxford, Cambridge, Aberdeen, the University of Holland, the Research for Organic Agriculture in Switzerland, the Agricultural and Organic University in Sweden, and also an organisation called the CSIRO in Australia. So a pretty credible study, we might think. And this research looked particularly at the argument for grass-fed animals and something called carbon sequestration, which is basically where the idea that grazing animals traps carbon in the soil and is therefore good for the environment. A redundant idea, really. And so this study conducted showed that globally, 1 gram of protein per person per day comes from solely grass-fed animals, whereas 32 grams of protein per person per day comes from other animal products. However, a quarter of the Earth's total usable land is taken up by ruminant animals, animals who graze. And so if we're truly to believe that it's possible to feed our planet on grass-fed animals alone, then we're going to need at least 5, 6, maybe even 7 planets to accomplish that, which means it's completely redundant, and it can't work as a system to begin with. And so that's why we fell into this system of factory farming. And so there's an expression in politics called the Overton window. The Overton window is about creating a system where extreme ideas become less and less extreme because you push the boundaries of the conversation further and further out. And all of a sudden things that did seem extreme in the beginning no longer seem extreme to the mainstream society. In effect, this is what we've done with animals. We live in a speciesist society, that's without doubt. And it's through these values of speciesism that we've pushed the boundaries of what we deem to be acceptable further and further and further out, until the concept of incarcerating, mutilating, forcibly impregnating, butchering, murdering, tormenting, torturing non-human, sentient life is not only deemed acceptable, but is ardently protected within society, even though it contradicts and contravenes with our most basic moral judgment and even the compassion that most people in society proclaim to have. And so you enter into a system where people say animal cruelty is wrong, but I pay for it to happen, and I'm going to ardently defend it. And that makes us angry. But if we trace back through our history, we can see how we've got to this point. But importantly, we can see how to get away from this as well. And so before we carry on to that, I want to talk about something that's topical at the moment, which is the Amazon. As we all know, the Amazon's on fire, burning. And we attribute much of the atrocities that's happening in the Amazon to the cattle industry. The burning, the degradation, the chopping down, the decimation of the Amazon to make way for cattle ranches, which is absolutely a huge problem. There's also the soybean plantation as well. And so soy farming in the world takes up 1 million square kilometers of land, which means that it's the whole of France, Germany, Holland, and Belgium. All of those countries dedicated, or the landmass dedicated just to soy farming, of which, as we know, around 80 to 85% is fed straight to animals, for animal feed. And now there's a whole lot of rhetoric at the moment about the fact that beef and red meat and cow grazing is terrible for the environment, which of course it is. But the problem that we have is we have these environmentalists who are giving up red meat and replacing it with chicken and white meat instead. And they don't see that as a problem from an environmental perspective. So in the UK, we import 1.83 million tons of soya every single year for animal agriculture. That equals 900,000 hectares of land in the Amazon destroyed for just soya in this country every year. Now to put that into perspective, the landmass of the UK is 24 million hectares. And we do nearly 1 million hectares of soya every year just for animal feed. But what many people don't realize is 50% of the soy that is imported into this country is fed to birds, to chickens, for their meat and for their eggs as well. And so when we look at the Amazon in the UK, our problem, as we perceive it, it's not the beef, it's not the cattle or the cow grazing, it's the chickens, it's the eggs. And that conversation is missing because we point the finger at the ranchers, but we should be pointing the finger at the chicken farmers in this country for what they're doing to the Amazon. Because the reason the Amazon's on fire is just as much on their shoulders and just as much on their hands. Now there was a study that was released by Harvard Law School, and it looked at the UK, and it looked at the possibilities for improving the ecosystems within the UK. Now animal agriculture takes up 80% of the total agricultural land in the UK, which means that 48% of the entire United Kingdom is solely for animal agriculture. Half of all the land in this country is dedicated to raising, murdering, and torturing animals. Absolutely insane, completely bewildering that we've got to this point. Now I'm from Yorkshire, and so for me, representing, right? I've been in London so my accent's fading, right? So I'm from Yorkshire, so driving around when I was younger, all I saw was hills. As far as the eye could see, short grass hills, fields, and nothing on them apart from grazing animals. And so I was taught growing up that this was the beautiful English countryside, that this was the hard stone of our landscape, which was something to be proud of, the great Yorkshire Dales. But that's not what Britain's supposed to look like. We're not supposed to see rolling hills and nothing but fields. They're barren wasteland, dead, dying, and used for nothing other than causing more death and more destruction. You see, Britain should be covered in lush green forest lands, lush green wildlife, hedgerows and shrubberies and wildflower meadows. And we've completely destroyed that, bulldozed, chopped down, burned, slashed, decimated, until there's nothing left. I was driving down to the coast because we were doing a little bit of food outreach this last week, and we drove through a forest, and I was like, this is amazing. This is beautiful. And it made me feel kind of excited in probably a little bit of a nerdy way. And I was like, this is what Britain's supposed to look like. And I remember looking through the trees and the magicalness and the mystery and the wonder of what could exist within there. And then, of course, it's just fields. And now I did an interview, or I'd say an interview, a debate with a sheep farmer earlier this year. And he said, sheep are the ultimate renewable energy. First of all, he's denigrated life to a renewable energy source, which tells you all you should need to know about the sheep farming industry. But more importantly, that couldn't be further from the truth. The amount of wildlife that's been destroyed, the amount of habitats and ecosystems that are being decimated so that we can selectively breed, artificially inseminate, and breed these animals into existence so they can contribute to the destruction, release methane, and then we butcher them and kill them and give ourselves heart disease and cancer and all these horrible illnesses. And they're the ultimate renewable energy. I mean, that just shows you how far gone we are, right? How diseased we are in our head that we see this as being a positive thing when we completely eliminate every single aspect of negativity, of which there is a significant amount. And so the study, this Harvard Law School study, was looking at the possibility of reforesting and rewilding the UK. And so they're advocating for a plant-based diet, because in doing so, switching to a plant-based food agricultural system, we can free up 75% of agricultural land in this country, which is about 35% of the total land mass. And so what we can do with that is allow trees to come back, wild meadows, and we can reintroduce animals that we have brought to the brink of extinction. And the reason that many of these animals have been brought to the brink of extinction or indeed beyond, it's because of animal farmers. Because they've been shot and murdered and rounded up and killed to protect the profits of farmers. Now, they were trying to introduce the lynx back into Scotland recently. Everyone said it was a good idea. Even DEFRA were talking about it in a positive way. And then all of a sudden, here come the sheep farmers. Oh, we can't have lynx and natural wild animals in the UK. That would be absurd, because they're going to kill the animals that we raise and profit from. And so we're actually standing in the way of bringing about a fairer and more just, but also a more beautiful, more harmonious and more symbiotic Britain, just to protect the profits of these farmers. Absolutely nonsense, isn't it? And it really worries me to think that they have so much power and so much authority that they can stand in the way of common sense, and people just nod and say, yes, this is acceptable, this is fine. It shows there's something deeply disturbing about how we view this country that we live in, and indeed the world that we live in as well. And so in the EU, there's something called the European Union Common Agricultural Policy, which is a tax subsidy. And now this tax subsidy is given to landowners. And it's given to landowners who have land that's in agricultural condition. Now, agricultural condition means that it's been completely destroyed and it's ready to farm on. Could be arable, could be animal. That's it. The landowners don't actually have to farm on the land. All they have to do is get into agricultural condition, and then it's considered suitable to be given a tax subsidy. This means that hundreds of thousands of hectares and acres across the European Union have been completely obliterated just so landowners can make money for the taxpayer and get a little bit of a benefit handout for destroying wildlife. Now, we might think that leaving the EU and Brexit could actually be quite a positive in this situation. But the National Farmers Union, the NFU, I like to call them the National Farmers Mafia, because that's what they more likely are. They only have about 55,000 people in their membership. They're not particularly big, but they have so much power. They present themselves as a lobbyist group, but in fact, when speaking to a civil servant within DEFRA, which is the Department for Agriculture and the Environment, the civil servant said that when they want to know what to do, they ask the National Farmers Union. So our government goes to the National Farmers Union and says, what would you like us to do? What do you want us to say? What do you want us to promote? And so several years ago, the EU said they wanted to cap the tax subsidy that was given in their agricultural policy. And the National Farmers Union didn't want to have any of that. And so they lobbied to the UK government saying, stop this from happening. And so the UK government went to Brussels and they had the bill changed. And the bill was changed so that it was up to the individual member states, it was at their discretion whether or not to cap the subsidy. Lo and behold, we decided not to cap the subsidy given to landowners in this country, which means that currently 174 landowners claim £120 million every single year for simply owning land that has been decimated and destroyed. The National Farmers Union say that they care about the environment and say they want to foster a better Britain. And yet they actually actively lobbied to prevent a scheme that would have incentivized farmers and landowners not destroying the environment. They actively opposed a scheme that could have protected the environment, and yet they stand up and say, oh no, we really care as farmers. No, they don't. No, they don't. They don't care. Of course they don't care. If they cared, they'd do something about it. But they actively stand in the way and stop progress from happening. And this is what we're up against. We're battling against a mafia that has complete control over the whim of our parliament. And nobody's doing anything about it, even when presented with scientific consensus that proves there's an alternative way. And yet we bang our heads against the wall, desperately screaming, hoping someone will listen, whilst our environment is destroyed and the animals are murdered at a completely unprecedented rate. And it makes me so sick that this is what's happening right now, and this is what the wool, so to speak, has been pulled across our eyes, and nobody's standing up and saying what's actually happening, and is saying the truth. And instead we hear propaganda perpetuated through the media every single day. Now, if you want to add something insult to injury, this thing happened in the European Parliament during the time of intense austerity. Do you remember David Cameron and George Osborne saying, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to cap people's benefits. So we have people on disability living allowance having their benefits capped at £20,000 a year outside of London, whilst rich landowners were profiting off a system that they created and made corrupt. How sick is this? And so I had an idea that maybe Channel 4 could do another series of benefit streams, where instead of demonising the working class, they could drive around the UK countryside looking for people in tweed driving Land Rovers, because they're the people milking the system. And so what are the alternatives? And so of course, if we leave the EU, which for all intents and purposes it certainly looks like we're going to be, Michael Gove has proposed a new form of subsidy, which is ultimately actually much better. And so he wants to provide a subsidy that incentivises farmers to implement environmental measures, which is kind of ironic really. And so one of the things they can do to claim their subsidy is plant hedgerows around the perimeter of the farms. Alright? Great. But think about it this way. We've paid millions to animal farmers to destroy the environment, and now we're going to give them millions to make it a little bit better. Right? How obscene is this? But it does present a really good opportunity for us, because there's so much power in this subsidy, there's so much power in how these systems are generated, that actually this is how we can change so much. By incentivizing arable and plant-based farming. And so with this rewilding concept, there's two general strains of thought. Now the first one is that we rewild as much of the UK as we possibly can, thus creating trees. Now a plant-based agricultural system reduces the amount of greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture by 70%. Now plant trees. 35% or so of the UK landmass, you create a carbon sink, where we can sequester carbon from the atmosphere and absorb it into the trees. An amazing scheme. The second idea is that we limit some of the rewilding that we do, and we increase the self-sufficiency of farming in this country, because we only produce about 50% of the food that we consume in this country, and the rest is imported in from abroad. And so we can use this extra land to increase the self-sufficiency of the UK, providing more jobs incidentally, but also at the same time reducing the amount of emissions and problems that come from importing food as well. And so that comes the age-old question, doesn't it? Well, what do we do about all these animal farmers? So, there are currently around 470,000 agricultural workers in the UK, which amounts to about 1.5% of the total workforce of this country. Now, you could remove the arable farmers from that equation. And so let's say that because 80% of land is for animal farming, let's say that 80% of the workforce is also for animal farming. So then we say there's maybe about 370 or 380,000 people involved in the agricultural system. Now we can also say that a huge amount of those people are doing it just as a job. They're in their communities, they need some money, and so they go and work there just to help out and earn some cash. So let's take off maybe another 120,000 workers. So now we're dealing with about 250,000 people, or about 0.8% of the total workforce of this country. Doesn't seem like such a big deal now, does it, right? All these animal farmers, the most protected people in the country, aren't they? About 0.8% of the workforce. And so we can provide subsidies to incentivize arable farming. Most of these farmers can easily switch, but there are some that can't. And so this is where we introduce something called vertical farming, which is potentially the most exciting thing that I've ever come across. Sounds a bit weird, right? So vertical farming is you can take any kind of space like this, any kind of building, and you build a manufactured farm inside there. It uses 90% less water, about the same amount less energy. In fact, it can be completely powered by renewable energy. And you can produce about 75 times more food per square foot than you can in a traditional plant farm. Now this provides jobs, but it also provides room and space for our environment to regrow, for the topsoil to no longer be eroding and to replenish, for animals to come back, for wildlife to come back, for our biodiversity to flourish. It creates such a better world, increases food availability, decreases food scarcity. Then we don't need the food banks because we can produce so much food in these areas that we can eliminate hunger and poverty across the world in these vertical farms. It's such an exciting prospect and something that's already beginning to happen. It's something that will definitely shape and change how we grow and produce produce across the world. And that makes me so excited because these things are available to us right now. And so animal farmers stamp their feet, play the victim, and cry about the fact that sometimes activists trespass and reveal the horrors of what's happening in their industry. But when push comes to shove, their days are numbered because people are waking up, getting angry, and also the solutions are becoming more and more available, becoming easy to facilitate, and their excuses are becoming less and less available and less credible in our society. See you later. Someone asked me a question. My goodness, is that the time already? I haven't got anything started. No. Someone asked me a question earlier. Do you think we'll see a vegan world in the future? And they said, do you think it'll happen soon? Yes, it will. It will, because there's so much happening all the time right now that it cannot be stopped and it will not be stopped. These advancements are taking place and people are getting angry and people are waking up and these systems will crumble. They will. They already are. We can see it and we can feel it. And even though our numbers are small currently, they're growing exponentially. And it will not be stopped at this point. That snowball effect, right? That snowball effect is really starting to pick up, and I feel like for the past 4 years I've been talking about snowball effect, but now I think it's here. That snowball is getting so huge, and it's just rampaging down the hill, covering every single day. Now, so when I first started getting into activism, the first thing that I did as an activist is I sent 2 emails, one to my mum and one to my dad. This was my first piece of activism. And the email basically said something along the lines of, you know, hey mum, hey dad, sorry we don't speak too often, you know I'm vegan, here's all the reasons I'm vegan, ethics, environment, health. Now my dad didn't reply to me, but my mum replied to me, said I was going to die from synthetic proteins, something along those lines. Like synthetic proteins, broccoli, you know, seems slightly unusual to me. Now at that time I was really angry, so intensely angry. I couldn't believe that my parents would not even reply to me or would talk to me in that way. And I became so disappointed and misanthropic within our species. And I really began to hate a lot of humans because I couldn't understand why these things were happening and why they were allowing them to happen. And now I strongly believe that success will come when we view others outside of the vegan compound as being part of the solution and not the problem. The problem is a structural, systematic problem that we can completely overcome, and we can do so in so many different ways. But I really truly believe that it's the same people right now that perpetuate the systems of violence who could one day be in this room with us. Right? Now most of us weren't born vegan, I certainly wasn't. And I used to say a whole host of absolutely absurd things. I'm sure we all did at one point. And so I think we can better understand why it is that society operates in the way that it does. It can encourage us to be less angry, less misanthropic, less disappointed, and more effective in how we communicate with people. And so in society, we are fueled by a whole bunch of biases that are just permeated into every action that we make. Confirmation bias. I mean, who's seen this article today? I was in the car and it came on the radio. Vegans and people who eat a plant-based diet may well be harming their brain because of something called choline, right? I mean, everyone saw this. And it's just this absolute idea of confirmation bias, because it quite clearly says in the article that even though this nutrient is found in things like beef and milk and eggs, it's also found in nuts and vegetables and other sorts of plant-based foods. But there's this notion of confirmation bias, which means we seek out information that agrees with our preconceptions. And so we can understand why it's so hard to get through to some people, because if you're raised from the moment you're born with a set of values and beliefs, then you seek out information that reaffirms those values and beliefs and makes them feel already hardened in your mind and in your consciousness. And so that's why we have to start speaking to them, because we can't trust people to come across this information on their own. We can't trust people to want to actively seek it out. We have to put it in front of them and say, look at this. Have you seen this? Have you watched this? Have you considered this? We need to do things that make sure this information is pushed right into their foresight, so to speak. There's also something else called the bandwagon effect, which is the false consensus bias that because the majority of people do something, it's automatically acceptable for everyone else to do it as well. And so that actually can work in our favour in the future. Because one of the biggest holdbacks to veganism is people think that it's a marginalised, not a marginalised, a marginal group. A group that exists outside the fringes of society. Which means that the more people who go vegan, the more people will go vegan because more people are becoming vegan. Now, right, it's true. And now humans are a lot like sheep, and I say this in the best way because sheep are probably my favourite animal. But in the sense that we like to belong in the flock. We have like a herd mentality. And so really and truly, we don't have to worry about telling everyone vegan, right? Because when people start going vegan to a certain point, everyone's going to follow suit because they want to feel included and they want to feel like a part of the future. And that's what veganism is, it's the future. I mean, make no mistake, they're either... There either is no future or veganism is the future. And so as we start to encourage this growth, which we're already doing, we'll find it gets easier and easier and easier, or at least I'm really, really hoping for that, aren't we all, right? And so I've really not got that much time left, which I'm surprised about, because that's going to be 45 minutes, my goodness, but here we go. Right. It's so important that in this time, when we're dealing with so much corruption, so much exploitation, so much facetious and farcical behaviour, that we hold on together, that we join together, and that we rise each other up. It's so important that we see each other as not just vegans, but as friends, as family, as people we can trust, as people we can lean on, as people we can ask for support, and as people we can trust to receive the support that we need. Now there are so many ways for us to advocate, there are so many ways for us to get out there and be activists and spread this message. But the most important thing is that we do it together, united as one, because that is what we are. A movement that exists through many individuals, but is cohesively one big individual, all striving together with the same goals, the same mentality, and the same ultimate objective at the end of the day. Now, I did a debate with a dairy farmer a couple of years ago, and I'm still pretty miffed that my dad had replied to me when I sent that email. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to send him it. I'm going to send it to him, and I'm going to declare myself and say, this is what I do now, this is who I am, and see what he says. And so I sent it to him, and said, just so you know, I did a debate with a dairy farmer, you can watch it at this time code. And he texted me back and replied to me, and he said, I know, I saw it. He said, I know all about Earthling. And I was like, oh damn, man, that's embarrassing. And he said, you were very persuasive. He said, if it was a Rocky Balboa match, you would have come out on top. And I was like, oh, that's... My dad's a bit of a film geek like me, so we talk in film references to each other. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And then a little bit later on, I call him up, and he says, I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of everything you're doing. And it seems amazing that these things are happening. And he said that when he worked, someone was coming to the vegan campout, and he couldn't quite believe that this was happening, that there was such a big community of people that cared, and it resonated with him. And so he went from not replying to me to turn a blind eye to me, and slowly and slowly and slowly has become to understand, accept, and become proud of me. And so this gives me hope on a wider scale for society. I'm using my dad as like a microcosm of the rest of the world, maybe slightly audaciously so, should we say. But people will often ignore us, and people won't understand us, and people will try to pretend that we don't exist. They'll hide from us, even when we present them with information. But just keep going. Just keep being persistent. Don't stop. Don't ever lose hope. Don't ever lose faith. Don't ever lose that sense of purpose, because that's what we have. That's why we're here, a purpose. Now, being vegan in a non-vegan world is hard. And one of the things that often sticks with me from my experiences in some of the worst places I've been to are the sights and the smells. The smells of the animals, their blood, their feces, their fear, and the sounds of the screaming, and the sounds of them being murdered. And these are things that we won't necessarily ever be able to shake. They'll probably be there in my mind, and I'm sure for all of us who've experienced these kind of things, they'll be there in our mind for the rest of our lives. But there will be a time in our life where these sounds and these smells and these sights only exist in our heads. Where they will no longer exist in the real world. And we will carry them with us for the rest of our lives as a reminder of that purpose that we had. We have a purpose now. We're no longer just living to get by, to do arbitrary things. We have a purpose. And that purpose is to bring about a more just, compassionate, and ethical world. So please have a wonderful time this weekend. Have the best time you can have. And then when you leave, fulfill that purpose and don't stop. It's okay to close our eyes and dream of a better world. But when we open our eyes again, make that dream your goal. And don't ever stop fighting to achieve that goal. Open your eyes and say, I will, I must, and I can. Open your eyes and say, I am strong. I am determined, I am tough, I am confident, I am motivated, I am loved, I am respected, I am capable. And then say, I will not give up. Say, I will not surrender. Say, I will not back down. Say, I will not turn away. Say, I will not fail. Then turn to each other, say that to each other, and then leave the camp out and make that dream the reality of the world. Thank you for listening.